and we have Allison York from Blanq Real Estate. I'm going to let you guys will get a chance later on to really kind of dive into what you do when we do the breakout sessions, but for time and everything, we're going to kind of dive right into the questions and get started. So that being said, just want to kind of start out with everybody and kind of going, and I'll kind of call you out so we can kind of go in order. But if we can just talk about, or you can talk about how has COVID impacted your specific trade from a evolutionary standpoint, not for something that we all had to like, okay, we got to go get hand sanitizer, right? What is something that you look at that's going to really alter and affect your industry as we go forward? And I'm just going to kind of go from left to right on my screen. So I'm going to start with you, Stephanie.
Sure. You know, operationally wise, COVID hasn't changed our industry too terribly much. I mean, we're lucky that construction has been deemed essential more or less everywhere. And we're already a truly safety-focused industry as well. So what has changed in the short term is the focus on safety regarding COVID and the protocols for that. But, you know, from an operational standpoint, that it's just sort of another thing that you deal with safety. What has changed is the relationship between general contractors, owners, and our trade partners. Everybody all of a sudden magically got a lot more flexible and a lot more understanding that, you know, this is something that's out of everybody's control and everybody just wants to say that rules are not important, but everybody sort of understands this is, you know, a new situation and maybe your fridges don't show up or maybe you have a crew that's out. And I've been really impressed with everyone in our industry to just sort of roll with the punches. I think the second part of that question was, is remote working going to be possible? For our industry, not. One of the sea changes I do see for that, though, is the possibility of remote inspections. So that would be for building inspections during the course of construction. A couple of markets are already moving forward with that, and it makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways to do that. It would be so much more efficient for the building departments and for the general contractors working through that. So for me personally, I'm really excited. Hopefully Charlotte-Mecklenburg will bring that on board sooner rather than later.
Awesome. Thank you so much. How about you, Allison?
Sure. So as a commercial broker, I focus primarily on office tenant representation. So office tenant rep has been hugely affected. Office retail were really the first immediately to be affected when everyone shifted to a remote or work from home model. So I feel like right now people are looking at the world pre-COVID and post-COVID, or, you know, what we're living in now. So the good thing is, in Charlotte specifically, pre-COVID, you know, we were one of the fastest growing cities, the sixth fastest growing city. We had the strongest office demand in the country, some of the best retail rates in the country, which is great, and kind of positioned Charlotte to handle what we've been facing with COVID, maybe a little bit better than some other cities. I think the major companies that are expanding here, coming here, growing within Charlotte, our big, obviously, financial sector in Charlotte has helped a lot as well. But now in the times of COVID or post-COVID, obviously retail leasing essentially halted. Office leasing, while deals are still happening, there were a lot of renewals, a lot of bigger companies, long-term vision deals that were already kind of in the plans. And obviously shifting to work from home and remote work is one of the biggest kind of disruptions that anyone in our industry or any industry really has faced, I think, probably in the history of time. So obviously, I mean, the work from home thing has been huge. And now, especially from like a retail and office tenant rep perspective, the question still stands, how is the future of work going to look? And I think we'll jump into that a little bit later on in this discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allison. And how about you, Melissa?
So I have to really agree with Allison. So I spent most of my career on workplace. So I focus on tenants, office space. So walking into sort of the world of COVID, you know, that book of work that was scheduled to happen sort of got halted because companies didn't know how to react. They don't know what to do. And, projects that are in motion, we're trying to pivot the best that we can to continue to keep them moving, try to figure out how to design for something we've never dealt with before. So I think the long-term impact is for us it's the office space. What's it going to look like? What's it going to be? How it's affected progressive AE. I was thoroughly impressed. I can't remember what day the stay-at-home order was, like March 26th, March 27th, something like that. I just remember when that order came out, everybody was able to quickly pack up their stuff. We're all mobile and sort of were able to pick up that work and take it home almost seamlessly. And I was quite honestly surprised that we were set up from a technological standpoint to do that and to be so collaborative while we were all separated.
Awesome. Dallas, how about you? What's your bring the rear up on this one for us and give us a good insight from your perspective? I can't, Dallas, your audio is not coming through. No.
There he is. No.
Can you hear him? Can anybody hear Dallas?
No.
No, we can't hear him, Terry.
I don't know what's going on there. Did you call in via phone, or are you on the computer? You might have to chat that to me. I don't know.
Why?
So maybe what we'll do is we'll kind of circle back to Dallas. Let's see if we can't figure out the audio thing there. And Jinnie, you want to go with the next question?
Sorry, I'm a little late. So are we on the question 1B?
Question 2 now. No, we just finished the question 1.
We're totally on question 2. So sorry, guys. I had chaos over here. So should we start with, anyway, so question 2. So what are you seeing specifically from your clients or your end users as you're trying to navigate this new sanitation and, cleaning your offices and things like that? Melissa, maybe you can start for us.
Sure. So, again, after COVID started, we spent a lot of time reaching out to clients that either are existing, sort of in their current space, reaching out to ones where we had active projects and started to talk about what is that return to workplace? What is that plan? And quite honestly, I've had very few of my clients have opted to return to work at this time. So I think most are looking towards fall, if not after the first of the year. So I think everybody's still kind of waiting to see, and, information changes daily. So it's so hard to plan for something because, if I thought about this today, I'm like, if I had looked at how the return to office looked, say April 15th, it's so different from kind of what it looks like today. But I think the ones that are in the office, like for instance, like our office opened right after Memorial Day, so it's been a very slow return, but we have sanitation protocols in place. There are limited uses for conference rooms. We've implemented one-way walkways, masks when you're not at your desk. Everybody is completely socially distanced. Rooms are sanitized. There's protocols for when I leave this conference room that I have to do. And it's just constant communication, and it has been communication from day one. And it's been communication in saying that, when you're ready, you're welcome back. Here are the protocols. And it's just been, communication has been key. And I think, when clients are thinking about return to work, it's establishing those protocols, and it's the consistent protocols over time. Safety is the most important thing. Businesses aren't going to function if we're not healthy and we're not working. So, we're the biggest assets, and, they all realize that. So.
Thank you so much. Allison, are you seeing any similarities or differences in your space?
Yeah, certainly. So I think very early on, when the masses realized that this wasn't going to be a short-term temporary thing. I remember rescheduling meetings in March for, mid-April, I'm sure we'll all be back to normal by then. But as soon as the world realized that wasn't happening, I think we've seen a lot of innovation from companies, you know, whether it be different types of materials that are safe for people, but really effective on surfaces. I mean, that's obviously been a big concern from a health standpoint. We don't want to fight one health concern and create others. So obviously sanitation is a huge concern immediately, especially as businesses start reopening, whether that be office spaces or, as we can see, you know, if anyone's been out to restaurants or any retail stores, the precautions that are being taken are huge, which is great. And the only way that people are going to feel comfortable returning to the office space eventually. But I think another big consideration is the short term versus the long term. And I like to look at it, you know, pre-vaccine and then post-vaccine, because eventually we will have a vaccine for this. You know, that's the goal. And people are not necessarily easy to change their behaviors long term. So I think all of the innovation that's coming out now with cleaning procedures, and people are talking about changing surfaces in their office space. They're talking about, you know, how are we going to clean the elevators and all of these common touch surfaces? That's going to be a big topic of conversation. But I think after, you know, we do have a vaccine for this in the future, hopefully now we'll have these measures in place for when we need them, but it won't be as large of a concern. That's kind of what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Next question is going to be for everybody, but I want to see if we can maybe start with Dallas and see if his audio is working out. Dallas, are you able to hear me? Can you say something?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Test 1, 2.
Yay.
Great. So before we jump into the next question, let me circle back to you real fast. And Dallas, how has COVID really impacted your company and trade, and as far as, like, you know, a big, you know, watershed type stuff moving forward?
Well, that was an excellent segue from Melissa initially. I'm on the FM side, so I'm definitely on the occupier and the tenant side of things with O&M and everything in that regard. We've seen everything similar, exactly what Melissa just said. I've been integral in forming the Cognizant approach to returning to the office. From an evolutionary and watershed perspective, really the FM industry is constantly changing. We're evolving as not only this pandemic evolves, but really as our business leaders and clients change the way that facilities are being used. So what we look at going forward, the FM finally, for the first time in my career, and I'm young in this, is not seen more so as a cost center. It's seen more as a driver of excellence. We are preparing our facilities for returning associates in a safe and productive manner, and that goes down to everything from the one-way aisleways and corridors, everything that you've seen in restaurants and hotels and other retail sectors. We're increasing our abilities for associates to remain autonomous and keep their own space clean, while also increasing our janitorial and cleaning perspectives. Everything that we can do to maintain the health and safety of our building, that's first and foremost of our mind. So talking on the topic of working remotely, I feel like there's a delicate balance with this subject. As an FM, it's hard to manage the built environment while you're not physically in that built environment. However, as the FM of multiple locations, you're never in multiple locations at once. So you have people, boots on the ground, that are in those locations that maintain them. But it's still a delicate balance. As you can see, I'm in my office today because we are actually preparing for returning associates next week. It's a much smaller subset. I maintain 30,000 square foot here in Charlotte. About 300 employees is my max capacity. However, post-COVID, we're looking at about 50% of that. And immediately here, I'm returning maybe 10 to 20 associates for this first go-round. So the scales of economy, it's actually much smaller than where we were at the beginning of March. However, we still have to maintain, again, the healthy and safeness aspects of our built environment.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and stick with you on this one. And this question is going to be for everybody, but I'll start with Dallas. How do you suggest we prepare for the next, COVID type of event? What kind of light bulb went off as to how we could have been better prepared?
That's an excellent question, specifically within my organization. As many can note, with corporate or larger organizations, you have vertical silos. However, the desegregating of those silos has been key to crafting a well-rounded response in how we're going to reoccupy our facilities. So that's the biggest light bulb moment that went off, is that we weren't planned. We had no plan in place or response plan for getting everyone out of the office. Thankfully, I work for a technology company, so everyone's issued laptops, and the ability to work remotely has been there ever since the very beginning. So we were able to transition pretty easily to a work from home model or a remote working model. The differences come into play when you've got essential personnel that need to come into the office. There's things that still happen within office environments that cannot happen in a remote setting. So that's been one of the biggest challenges with once we forced everyone to work remotely. We've crafted up together our response plan with all of our different silos, different verticals, physical security, FM, real estate, the whole 9 yards, business continuity even as well. But the biggest light bulb, I guess, has been the desegregation of those vertical silos so that all parties can work together to craft the best response that organization can move forward with in returning associates or also being prepared for that next pandemic situation.
Thank you for the information. Stephanie, what about on your end? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, for us, one of the things that sort of hit us out of the gate was the lack of PPE, which, like healthcare, construction is dependent on PPE pre-COVID, as we will be post-COVID. So making sure that you really have a robust supply chain and stockpile of those, so you're not caught off guard during the next pandemic if it happens. So we're prepared to make sure that people can still be on the job site safely. The second thing for us is construction has moved really towards an efficiency model over the last 20 years. And that really came to a crashing halt during the pandemic, just because there's so much uncertainty to what you can get when. There's been a lot of focus on just-in-time delivery of things that you need. And all of a sudden, those things aren't being delivered just in time. So you're experiencing delays that could have been prevented. So I think we'll see a return to some sort of built-in redundancy, both in ordering materials and stockpiling items for safety for our employees and workers.
Awesome. How about yourself, Melissa?
Well, this is a hard question because, one, I don't want to have to deal with another pandemic in my lifetime. This is enough. But, if we do have to prepare for it, I think some of the struggle is, everybody I work in a very collaborative environment, and we're constantly bouncing ideas off of each other on designs, on finishes. And everything we do is very tactile and it's very visual. And, it's like, okay, everybody work from home. And it was like, okay, so how do I stay connected? I mean, there were moments of loneliness, and, I think trying to make sure that you stay connected to your team, I think, and knowing that it's okay to have the personal conversations and the social conversations, and it doesn't always have to be about work. We were very intentional in setting up, we had lunchtime Zoom calls. So everybody had, sitting there eating their sandwich in their house, and, cats and dogs are like, look at my cat, look at my dog, here's my kids. Like, I think some of those personal connections, were a little more bonded than they were prior to COVID. But I think it's just really understanding that we're people, we want to be around people, and maintaining that connection is important. And, we were able to do that through technology, and, it was just, I think that's probably the highlight for me is, it's okay to talk and not talk about work when you're not at home or when you're at home.
I mean, we all are human at the end of the day, so we all have emotions and feelings.
Yep.
Allison, what was the big light bulb over there? How do you think that we can kind of hopefully be best prepared, not necessarily for a pandemic of COVID nature, but of something to this effect?
Yeah, so I think my first big kind of shocking moment or aha moment was realizing, I think, Dallas mentioned business continuity and how so many companies are not set up well or well positioned, whether that be from an operations standpoint or just from a cash reserve standpoint, to withstand any sort of pause in business. I mean, I think when it comes to like restaurants and retail, it's an astonishing like 2 weeks cash reserves that a lot of restaurants have. 2 weeks, that's it. You know, they blew through that months ago. And then other, you know, companies that are not necessarily in restaurant or retail are maybe 30 days to 45 days of cash reserves on hand. That's crazy to me. And I get that that's easier said than done, but I think that's been a light bulb for a lot of business owners. You know, we need to be better prepared when it comes to continuing our business, supporting our employees. If we are not able to operate business as usual for a certain amount of time, you know, hopefully we can withstand a little bit better than most companies have been able to. I think by the time we were a couple weeks in here, not only individuals and families were struggling, but companies were really struggling as well. And that happened quick. And here we are, you know, 4 months into this, and that's still problematic. So that was the biggest aha moment for me, where I was like, wow, you know, I think companies need to focus on their business continuity plans, their cash reserves, and how they're going to carry on in difficult times. And then I think, you know, as Melissa mentioned, companies are realizing that not only can we work from home, but maybe we should ensure that every person in our company is set up to do that. I mean, now more than ever, business is integrated with your personal life, with your family life. I mean, we are all constantly connected to our work. And now all of a sudden, you know, I don't have children myself, but I know plenty of people who all of a sudden found themselves as full-time parents, full-time employees, full-time teachers, full-time babysitters, and companies need to be able to support their employees to live in a world where that's going to be required of people. So I think this has been a good practice in that, and showing a lot of employers that your employees can handle a lot more than what you think, and they can handle the responsibility of having flexible work from home or remote work. And I think that's going to be a huge takeaway. And something that definitely companies would have been better prepared for it if they were very quick to transition to that remote work from home model. So moving forward, I can definitely see companies ensuring that all of their employees are set up to do that.
Thank you. That's some really good insight. Jinnie, next question.
So what do you guys suggest, or sorry, what are you looking for now, and maybe be most helpful when you're looking for new vendors, current vendors, or new partnerships? Let's start with Stephanie.
Sure. So what we look for mostly is, am I back?
You're back. You're back.
Yeah,
okay,
you froze for a minute. I was like, what? Is it me?
No, it must be me. Sorry. So basically, we're looking for transparency with vendors and clients. You know, just being honest and upfront and understanding about where people are right now, and knowing that everybody really is trying their best to work through this. And, you know, it's okay to know that there's a problem. It's not okay not to know that there's a problem, because once you're aware of something, then everybody can work as a team to try and solve it or mitigate it as best they can. So for us,
Just give it a second.
that's super important. And again, back to the safe, that's very, very important. Did I freeze again?
Just
Yes.
for a second.
Just
Sorry.
for a second. That's okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
safety is still always, it's always been top of our priority, and it's even higher up there now.
Great to know. Thank you so much. Dallas, what takes are you seeing in facility management?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I rely on my vendors to be experts in their fields, their respective fields. So I still rely on either current vendors or new prospective vendors to remain those experts in the fields. Me being the FM, I rely on those third-party providers to keep up to date with changing technologies in their industry, new products or new things coming out, new ways of combating, as we've seen with COVID, every single day, this thing changed just a little bit until now we've gotten to the point where we're 4 months down the road since the shutdown here in Charlotte, and the changes have seemed to sort of cease, but they're still there. So no matter what, we have to be abreast, and as managers of the FM and built environment and our vendor partners, we have to maintain each other's current expert status in their fields, if that makes sense. So I still look for that in maintaining a relationship too, whether with current vendors or new prospective vendors. That's how business is built, is off of relationships. I haven't changed any of my incumbent providers, only because they have been very upfront with me and forefront. Back to Stephanie's point, if they don't know the answer, tell me you don't know the answer, but tell me you're going to look into the answer and you're going to find out. You're going to work with me to provide that answer back and forth. So maintaining the expert status is what I look at in looking with any vendors. Yeah, that's the biggest key for me.
Well, thank you. That's very important. Yeah, just and respectful. So, Terry.
Awesome. All right, this question. We have seen the multifamily and industrial sectors continue to surge during the last several months. I'll start with Stephanie on this one. Stephanie, do you see that trend continuing, and what is your take on their approach to office space over the next year or 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I think we're pretty insulated in Charlotte as far as multifamily goes. We've been a real hot spot for that. I think we'll continue to be, especially as I think people in the big cities sort of learn their lesson from this, that maybe being stacked on top of everyone isn't the greatest life plan. So I really see the multifamily still staying very strong in Charlotte. Same with industrial. Again, going back to that just in time.
Lost you again. So lost you a little bit longer this time.
Summer.
All right, so okay, you're back, I think.
Okay, sorry. My internet's been great this whole time, and of course it's going out now.
Only when you talk.
Only when I talk, of course. So going back to industrial, I really see that remaining strong and growing. If you look at the forecasts, industrial is actually forecasted to have a better year this year than it was at the beginning of the year. So again, going back to that storage and that redundancy and stockpiling, I think we're going to see real growth in that sector. Office-wise, again, I think this is a real shakeup, and I'm sure Allison can speak better to this with how people are going to do their long-range planning. I have a feeling we'll see a drop in density in a lot of office spaces and maybe move to more of a hub and spoke sort of model where you have one central location and then you have more remote locations that workers can go to, including work from home options.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Allison, is that a great segue there? What is your take on this one?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll just kind of piggyback right off that and touch on office first. I mean, office is still a huge question mark for a lot of people. I've been on many calls of the future of the workplace post-COVID, and some of the best in the business across the country are still like, we don't really know for sure what's going to happen, which is tough. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is the uncertainty that surrounds COVID and all aspects of life, but, particular to this topic, what is it going to look like? And I think it goes along what I was saying too, is there's, kind of a pre-vaccine and a post-vaccine plan. I think a lot of companies are trying to make long-term decisions based on the short term that we're living in now, which I don't necessarily think is the smartest call, right? What we're experiencing today could be vastly different 6 months from now, a year from now. And once we do have a vaccine that hopefully can contain and mitigate the effects of COVID-19. But I think that the work from home and remote work model will be here to stay. I think that will be an option. I think a lot of employees will choose to work from home some and also come into the office some. The office has always been a place that really helps reinforce company culture, company expectations. And I mean, we can see even just with the growth of co-working, for instance. Co-working is an office space for people who don't have to go to an office space. People like to have community. People like to have that human interaction. And what's interesting is there's been a huge uptake, before COVID, of actual large companies and corporate entities also utilizing co-working spaces as that hub and spoke model that Stephanie mentioned. So I think the remote, the optional, the flexible work schedule is certainly here to stay. As far as what the office itself looks like, some people are saying, well, we're going to see de-densification. Some people are saying, well, we're going to see companies that are going to be leasing more square footage because we're going to go back to a private office model versus the open workbench model. But I think time will tell. A lot of design firms have seen both ways. Are we going to just have plastic in between? We're going to have, you know, one desk empty between people. And it could go that way. And I think it really depends on a lot of factors. But 4 months, I don't think is a long enough time to really understand the long-term effects of huge changes in how your workforce and where your workforce works. So it might be a little trial and error, and it might change over the next, you know, 18 to 24 months if companies put in certain measures and then end up changing their mind. So that's a really long-winded way to say I think there's a lot of potential ways it could go. And then just real briefly to touch on multifamily, I think Stephanie summed that up really well. What's interesting about Charlotte is the market is still growing. There's somewhat of a housing shortage. I think affordable housing, while it was a conversation pre-COVID, is going to be even more so of an important conversation post-COVID, especially as the city grows. And then industrial is thriving. The increase in e-commerce and that whole sector, there's one reason for that. And then also the trade war, if you will, which kind of was the hot topic of conversation at the end of 2019. And tariffs and things like that on foreign goods, I think has brought back a big resurgence of industrial and manufacturing property in the United States. So I think that'll certainly continue as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that insight. Jinnie?
So I'm a little confused because we've skipped to number 6.
I skipped it, so number 5. You're just going to do 5.
Thank you. I was like, what are we doing? Okay, so we're going to start with Stephanie.
No, this would be Melissa in Dallas. Sorry.
Okay, you're totally confusing me. Okay, so Melissa, let's start with Melissa. So touchless energy, touchless technology, and I can't even say that, desensification in our current workspaces is, are they going to be viable long-term moving forward?
I think so. I'm working with a client right now. We're designing a space for them. And one of the things he asked for, he's like, I don't want to touch any doors. He's like, I want to be able to walk in, have the doors open. I don't want to have to touch my office door. I don't want to have to touch a handle. So yeah, I think it's going to continue to move that way. I mean, anything that we can automate, I think people will try to do. I mean, touchless fixtures in restrooms, especially, looking at hardware, how can I get in and out of a place and, keep my hands to myself and not touch anything. I mean, I don't think that's going to go away. I think it's just going to continue to build.
Very, very interesting. Dallas, what is your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. These two aspects, they will not only remain in place, but I truly believe that they'll increase in utilization. As she just said, touchless technologies in the restrooms, automatic doors, entries for work order systems, like if someone has an issue, let's say in a shared conference room, taking a QR code, taking a picture with their own personal phone, can submit a work order out to my staff and then dispatch the staff. So ultimately reducing touch points, the touchless technology will inherently reduce those touch points. And that's how FMs can continue to provide the health and safety of building occupants. De-densification may not be the best way that I would describe it. What I've seen happening in other Cognizant locations across the U.S., instead of removing desks, they can actually increase utilization by a split schedule approach. Person A on A days, person B on B days. They could even share the same desk, provided that the FM staff and really even the associates, you're putting that autonomy back on the associates to clean up after themselves and have the janitorial crew come in on a nightly basis and perform that, just to add the kind of the icing on the cake to ensure that it is a clean and safe practice. Now, when we return to office locations in a phased approach, I mentioned that we're not over 10% overall occupancy for this first approach. So de-densification by removing of workstations or physically moving them, other than removing of chairs, that's not something that we're looking at. But that split team and split approach for scheduling, that's definitely something that we're engaged with, and something that we're engaging our project managers who are in charge of staffing at all of our locations. So I really wouldn't call it de-densification. That is certainly an aspect of it, but maybe a integrated work schedule would be maybe a better way of describing it.
It's a much nicer word too. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can add,
It's much easier to say.
if I can add something onto that too, so I sort of missed the last part of that question. You know, in sort of the clients that have started projects sort of during the COVID or had an expectation of what their design would look like, have also looked at how do you restructure, you know, sales teams coming in, how is travel impacted, but also looking at how can you make the workspace a little bit more flexible, especially if you're moving into a new kind of brand new location. So looking at, you know, what do you need day one, sort of, you know, growth's typically baked into some of the headcount numbers. So not installing those workstations day one, leaving open spaces for, you know, some collaboration, but then backfilling those spaces once sort of the COVID things passed and everybody's, there's a vaccine and things are safer to hopefully get back to a normal process. I mean, that's one way that we've approached it too. And, you know, sort of the de-densification part of it, you know, with the work from home, but also looking at, do locations start to change? So does the office start to become sort of a drop-in and it's a collaborative meeting space? Again, also too, with that sort of that A/B schedule. So if you have certain teams that come in, and how do you mix those teams? So are you sort of forcing that interaction of different groups to come in to work together that may not have worked together? And then again, kind of building on what Allison said about reinforcing that culture. I mean, all that stuff really just ties in together. It's amazing.
Wow.
That's great insight, you guys. So the last question is just a little quick party one, kind of a fun one for everybody. So, you know, just a quick 15 seconds or so. With Kanye West announcing his presidential run, who is the one musical artist from any era or genre that you would choose to run for president? And I'm going to start with you, Stephanie.
Oh, good. I'm glad I'm first. I was afraid someone else would choose mine and I'd have to follow up. But obviously it would be Beyonce. She already has the anthem in Who Runs the World. And I think she's, you know, a combination of smart, tough, funny, compassionate, and that would be pretty hard to beat. Also plug to make sure you're registered to vote, just everybody on the call.
Yes, that's right. Love it. How about you, Allison?
Beyonce.
So mine was also Beyonce.
No.
I'll expand
Sorry,
it
Allison.
a little bit. No, that's great. And I think so. Initially, I was like, well, you know, obviously, I'm like very pro female president sooner rather than later. I think Beyonce and Jay-Z are like the ultimate power couple. They're both very business savvy. They both have been politically involved in the past. So I think the two of them as the first couple would be pretty amazing. But my second option B was Will Smith, because he's just a great, likable guy. Like, he's got that, you know, political air about him. I could see him shaking hands, kissing babies, all the things.
Okay, all right. Dallas,